All right, so today, let's look into something pretty interesting, I think. What it's actually like to work at Princeton University.
Mm.
Not just, all that, oh, it's prestigious stuff, but like the real deal. Based on what Princeton itself says, and insights from Jarrod Kanizay. He's the CEO of academicjobs.com, by the way.
What I find fascinating here is this unique combo of sources. Like, we have the university's perspective, but then we also have an expert who has this much broader view of the whole academic employment world.
Exactly. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll know what makes Princeton a unique employer. And maybe you could even see yourself working there. Okay, so Princeton, Ivy League, New Jersey.
Yeah.
We all know that. But when I was looking through their materials, one number really stuck out to me. Over 7,300 staff for just over 9,000 students. That's almost like a one-to-one ratio.
Yeah, that's a huge investment in their people. It seems like they're really focused on individual attention and, a strong sense of community, which makes sense when you think about how dedicated they are to creating a supportive environment.
Right. It's not just like a big faceless institution. And then there's their research funding, over $200 million every year. But it's not just the amount. It's also like what they're doing with it. For example, they're leading the way in plasma physics research. They're really pushing the limits of clean energy with their fusion energy work. Like, can you imagine being part of that team?
Oh, yeah, that's such a great example. It shows how Princeton's values actually translate into real-world stuff. They're not just talking about innovation, they're actually pursuing it. They're tackling those big problems that could really change things up. And that kind of environment is really appealing for a lot of talented people.
Totally. And they're not just trying to attract those big-name professors either. They're really putting effort into building a diverse faculty and staff who are excited about the things they value, like innovation, collaboration, integrity, and inclusion.
Yeah, and that's where I think Jarrod Kanizay's perspective is so valuable. He points out how Princeton's focus on excellence goes beyond research. It includes the way they involve their students. He actually said he loves how they celebrate their staff and how they engage students.
He's right. It's easy to get caught up in all the academic side of things. But a university is more than just research papers. It's about creating a community where everyone feels valued and connected to what the university is trying to do. And speaking of feeling valued, let's talk about benefits. You have your health and wellness, tuition assistance, all that typical stuff. But then there's some things that really stood out to me, like their really nice retirement plan and the on-site childcare options.
Yeah, those are some great examples. It shows how Princeton goes beyond just the standard benefits to create a more well-rounded experience that really supports their employees at different times in their lives.
Exactly. And if anyone out there is thinking, okay, this sounds incredible, but what kind of jobs are we even talking about? That's where academicjobs.com comes in.
Yeah, it's such a useful resource. You can check out all sorts of specific job openings at Princeton. And we're not just talking about professorships here. They have positions in everything from research and science to administration, faculty support, sports, so many fields.
Seriously, it's impressive how much variety there is. It shows how diverse the university environment is. And I know we said it's not all about prestige, but you can't really talk about Princeton without mentioning some of the alumni. Just for fun, let's name a few. Albert Einstein, Michelle Obama.
Jeff Bezos, Sonia Sotomayor, John Nash. I mean, the list just keeps going. It makes you think about all the amazing people that have come through Princeton.
Right. It shows you what kind of impact a Princeton education can have.
But let's get back to the now. If you're wondering how to actually apply, we've got some answers right from Princeton's own Q&A.
Oh, that's a great place to start. And it's surprisingly simple. You just go to the Princeton Careers website and make an account.
Easy. Upload your resume and your cover letter, and that's it. You're officially in the running. But then what? What's the whole process actually like? Well, it kind of depends on what position you're applying for and the department.
Okay, that makes sense. But in general, what can someone who's applying expect to happen?
So typically it starts with your application getting reviewed, either by a hiring manager or like a search committee. They basically decide if your skills and experience match what they need for the role. If you pass that first screening, you might have a phone interview with the recruiter or the hiring manager.
So it's kind of like a first date, but for a job. You're just trying to get a sense of each other and see if there's a connection.
Exactly. And if that goes well, the next step is usually an interview in person or online. This is where you really get to show them who you are, show your enthusiasm for Princeton, and how you can help them achieve what they're doing. They might also ask for preferences or some work samples at this stage.
I imagine the interviews can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
With all the talented people they're looking for, what kind of questions should someone be prepared to answer?
They'll definitely want to know about your experience. and your skills and how well you understand Princeton's values and goals. But they'll also be looking for something more. Like, do you have that intellectual curiosity, that genuine passion for your work, the willingness to collaborate and really be part of the community?
So it's not enough to just have the right things on your resume. You have to show them who you are as a person and what you bring to the table. Okay, so let's say you ace the interview. You feel great. What's the last thing you have to do?
Well, there's the standard background check, of course. They verify your education and work history, do a criminal background check,
Yeah,
and sometimes a drug screening.
all the usual stuff. But honestly, waiting for all that to finish can feel like forever. Do you know anything about how long it all usually takes?
Unfortunately, there's no easy answer to that. It really changes depending on the job, how many people applied, and a bunch of other factors. But the Princeton Careers website has some general guidelines.
Okay, good to know. So we've talked about the actual process of applying and what to expect during the hiring process. But let's take a step back for a minute and talk about the bigger picture, the culture at Princeton. What makes this place so special?
That's a great question. It's something that goes beyond just the facts and figures. There's this certain energy, a vibe at Princeton that's hard to describe.
I feel like you're about to say but.
But I'll try my best to explain. From what I've gathered, it's a place where they value intellectual curiosity, where people are encouraged to work together, and where everyone is truly passionate about what they're doing.
So it's not just a job. It's a community of people with similar interests
Hmm.
who are all working towards the same goal.
Exactly. And that shared goal creates this sense of belonging, like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And that leads to a more engaged and happier workforce.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Stay tuned for part 2. We're going to dive deeper into the unique things about working at Princeton. We'll talk about the good stuff, the challenges, and the overall vibe that makes this place so special. Welcome back. So we've kind of gotten a sense of what Princeton looks for in an employee and how to actually, get your foot in the door. But what's it like to work there day to day? Is it all like dusty libraries and super quiet?
Oh, not at all. Remember how we talked about how important student engagement is to Princeton? Well, that makes for a pretty energetic atmosphere, even outside the labs.
Okay, I get it, but paint me a picture. What are some things that make Princeton different from, let's say, working at a big tech company or like a government agency?
I think one big difference is that you feel like your work has a lasting impact. Think about it. Princeton isn't worried about quarterly profits or elections. Their work is about figuring out these big questions, pushing the limits of what we know. And that makes for a very different work environment.
So it's less about the bottom line, more about contributing to something that'll be around for a while. That must be inspiring for the people who work there.
Absolutely. And that focus on the long term attracts a certain kind of person, someone who's really driven by curiosity and a desire to make a real difference.
And I bet that kind of environment leads to a lot of collaboration, right? Like people from all these different fields coming together, sharing ideas.
Exactly. Princeton is known for its interdisciplinary approach. They really encourage faculty and staff to break out of their usual areas and work together to solve problems from different angles.
I love that. It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And at Princeton, they're definitely going far. They're dealing with some of the biggest issues we're facing, like climate change, global health, artificial intelligence, social justice. Imagine being a part of those conversations, contributing your skills and ideas to finding solutions.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. But let's be real for a sec. No workplace is perfect, right? Even paradise has its downsides. So what are some of the challenges that come with working at a place like Princeton? Be honest.
You're right. It's good to keep things real. I think one potential challenge is that there's a lot of pressure to perform at a really high level. Remember, Princeton attracts some of the smartest people in the world, so there's a lot of competition even among colleagues.
So it's not a place for people who want to take it easy. You need to be able to handle a fast-paced environment and be intellectually stimulated.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But it's not just about being smart. It's about that desire to keep learning and growing, to push yourself beyond what you're comfortable with. And of course, with high expectations comes a certain amount of stress.
That makes sense. You're surrounded by brilliant people working on groundbreaking projects. It's going to be intense.
Yeah,
But I'm guessing there's a lot of support to help people deal with that.
you're exactly right. Princeton knows that its employees are its most important resource, and they really invest in their well-being. For example, they have great professional development programs, mentoring opportunities, and resources to help people balance work and life.
So they're not just pushing people to their limits. They're also giving them the tools they need to succeed and stay healthy.
Exactly. It's a culture of high expectations, but also high support. And I think that's a really powerful combination.
Okay, so how does all of this connect to Princeton's overall mission as a university? How does the employee experience contribute to their goals of advancing knowledge and serving humanity? It can't just be about publishing research papers, right?
You're right. It's so much more than that. Remember, Princeton's mission is also about teaching future leaders, shaping the minds of the next generation.
So the employees are part of that educational mission, even if they're not teaching in a classroom.
Exactly. Whether they're supporting research managing facilities or doing administrative tasks, every employee is part of creating that learning environment.
So it's like one big team working towards the same goal. That must make people feel really connected.
You got it. That shared sense of purpose is why a lot of people choose to work at Princeton. It's not just a job, it's a chance to be part of something truly meaningful.
That's really inspiring. But let's talk specifics. What are some examples of how Princeton actually supports its employees and creates this amazing culture we're talking about?
Well, one great example is their focus on professional development. They offer all kinds of training programs and workshops to help people learn new skills and move up in their careers.
So they don't just hire talented people, they also help them grow and reach their full potential.
Exactly. And their mentoring program is another good example. New faculty and staff get paired up with more experienced colleagues, so they have a built-in support system to help them navigate the world of academia.
It sounds like they're really serious about creating a culture of learning and growth, both professionally and personally. What about work-life balance? We hear a lot about that these days.
Princeton is definitely on top of that. They offer generous paid time off, flexible work arrangements, on-site childcare. They even have a subsidized fitness center so people can stay healthy.
Wow, they've thought of everything. But I got to ask, with all these perks and support, are there any downsides to working there?
Well, like any job, there are always challenges. Some people might find the whole academic environment a little intimidating. And the pressure to excel, while it can be inspiring for some, can also be stressful for others.
So it's not for everyone. But for the right person, it sounds like an incredible opportunity to grow, learn, and contribute to something important. We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to talk about. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll see how Princeton compares to other top universities and explore what really makes it stand out in the world of higher education. All right, so we've really gotten a good look at what it's like to actually work at Princeton, the culture, the benefits, even some of the downsides. But let's zoom out for a second. How does Princeton compare to other big universities when it comes to attracting talent? It's not like they're the only option out there.
That's true. There are a lot of great universities, but Princeton consistently ranks high, not just for academics, but also for employee satisfaction.
Oh, really? What are they doing that makes people so happy?
Well, remember how we talked about how focused they are on research? That focus doesn't just attract big names. It creates this stimulating environment for everyone, even employees who aren't in research roles. They feel connected to that idea of discovering new things and pushing boundaries.
So it's not just about working at a famous place. It's about feeling like you're actually part of something that's shaping the future.
Exactly. And it goes back to what Jarrod Kanizay was saying about how important it is to engage students. That makes the atmosphere more energetic and vibrant compared to some other universities that can feel a little more isolated.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's less about being formal and more about being part of a dynamic community.
Uh-huh.
But let's be honest, is there anything that people find challenging about working at Princeton? We can't just pretend everything is perfect.
Of course not. Every workplace has its own little things. One thing I've heard is that because there are so many brilliant people, the standards are really high, which can be motivating, but it can also create a lot of pressure for some people.
So it's not a place for people who just want to coast.
Right. You have to be okay with always learning and pushing yourself. But Princeton has a lot of support systems in place. They know that to achieve excellence, they need to take care of their employees.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't just expect people to perform at their best if you don't give them the resources to do it. So for someone listening who's thinking, okay, Princeton sounds amazing, but where do I even begin? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think first you should really think about your own values and goals. Do they match up with what we've talked about? Are you excited by collaboration, by intellectual challenges, by having a sense of purpose? If the answer is yes, then go check out the Princeton Careers website and academicjobs.com. See what kind of jobs they have available.
And remember, it's not just about being a professor. We've talked about how many different fields they hire in. This might sound corny, but working at Princeton is kind of like becoming part of something bigger than yourself.
I don't think that's corny at all. You're surrounded by all these incredible achievements, but you're also helping to write the next chapter. It's pretty unique.
That's a great way to put it. So if you're looking for a challenge, if you want to be inspired, and maybe even make a little history yourself, Princeton might be the perfect place for you. Keep learning, keep exploring. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be talking about your amazing accomplishments at Princeton.